Hello and welcome to the Child Care Business Coach podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to join us. As you know, my name is Evelyn Knight. I am the founder and CEO of Child Care Business Professionals, and we are hosting the Child Care Business Summit. So if you don't have your ticket yet, make sure you get it. You don't want FOMO. You've got to get to the Child Care Business Summit this year. It is absolutely life-changing. If you ask some of our past guests, they'll tell you how life-changing it is. But I'm not going to take up too much of your time with that. I want to introduce my guest. This is David Encarnation, and he is the owner of Daycare Accounting Pros. And I got to tell you guys how I met David. It's kind of funny. This is actually our first actual conversation. I was scrolling through TikTok. Yep. And I came upon his TikToks. And I literally clicked on his channel and just watched one after another, like, oh my gosh, this guy knows what he's talking about. This is it. This is it. And I was just literally like, you were definitely preaching to the choir as I was going through your TikToks. So yeah, I mean, TikTok can be a great tool sometimes, right? You get some good education there. So David, why don't you introduce yourself to my audience and tell us a little bit about you, how you got into daycare accounting. That's actually an interesting field to choose for accounting.
Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate what you're doing for the industry.
Thank you.
Very few people have taken on the task of helping these childcare businesses. And especially with the economy that we have right now, this time, these type of situations, these type of podcasts, information are critical for these business owners. So I appreciate you for that. So we were having a previous conversation about how you got involved with daycare, with childcare. I got involved with accounting because I had a $75,000 tax bill. Wow. And because of an accountant that messed things up. And I went to another accountant. I went to 3 accountants, and they all shuffled their feet. Finally, after about 5 years, I got frustrated and I started calling the IRS. This was in 2008. And it took me a couple of months, but I learned so much that the accounting firm that was handling the case offered me a job. And I was able to negotiate that to, I paid 15 grand on the 75,000.
Wow.
So I learned so much that they hired me. So I said, okay, so we took it on. I had a few childcare businesses at the beginning. There weren't many. Then I branched out on my own. We started doing accounting for construction. So I chose construction because the accounting for construction is overwhelming to most accountants. So I kind of like the challenge. And if I can master that, I could be a huge asset to these business owners. Then that's the parent company of Daycare Accounting for Accountax. Then we went into the childcare business. They just started referring clients to me, and it took off. Then I realized that out of the 10 childcare owners that I spoke with, 9 of them had major problems.
Yes.
I said, this is something that I can help with. This is something that's critical to our business. So we made a switch, we rebranded, and we started focusing on childcare businesses. And one of the major, hands down, problem that most childcare owners are having is that they have these LLCs, but they're not being taxed properly.
Oh.
By that I mean, TikTok, there are a bunch of LLCs. Oh, open an LLC. Call us, we'll open an LLC for you. And if you ask a childcare owner, what type of business entity are you? They'll say LLC. When you ask them, how are you being taxed? They respond, LLC.
Yes.
That's automatically a red flag. I already know what's the issue. And the problem is that I have with these TikTokers, I don't hate on anyone, but if you're going to talk about creating LLCs, you also have to talk about the tax consequences of that LLC. Because it's unfortunate when these childcare businesses open these LLCs and they sit across the desk from me and we're doing a tax return, and I have to give them some bad news because they owe, 5 figures in taxes. And it's simply because they're being taxed as a sole proprietor. And there's a simple switch. Last week, I spoke to someone that they did their tax returns for 2022, and they sent it to me just to review it. And automatically, I know exactly where to go. And I see they're paying $24,000 in self-employment tax. When this is the secret, if you choose the right structure, that $24,000 is zero.
Wow.
So the IRS, they want us to avoid paying tax.
Mm-hmm.
They give us the roadmap. We just have to follow it. And it's just using strategies that are going to take us to the point where we're paying zero tax. And that's our primary focus. So we preach that we want all 900,000 childcare businesses in the US to understand that they can use taxes, bookkeeping, and payroll as a tool to grow the business.
Oh.
Very few people look at it that way. But if you can save, like I had an example with a client where I said, you save the 25,000. And so they said, don't go on vacation. Take the 25,000, hire 2 more employees. Those 2 more employees are going to generate an additional 50,000 within 6 months. And then in a year, whatever you're paying them, you're going to be up over $50,000.
Okay.
So when you mention mindset, those are the little nuggets that we just have to change and adjust, and we'll take our business to the next level.
Yes. And speaking of the mindset, before we started recording, David and I were talking about my journey, and I was telling him about how I was facing bankruptcy. I think I was an owner at that point for about 4 years. And I had to make a change. I was telling him I actually had a 6-figure IRS bill that was at my door. I had a bookkeeper, I had an accountant, kind of the same thing what you were saying just now, where it was, I just found out they weren't doing their job and I had no idea. The way I found out was I had an IRS agent knock on my front door. And I thought my bookkeeper was handling everything. I thought everything was taken care of. And next thing I know, I had an IRS agent knocking on my front door. And that was just such a huge reality check for me. At the same time, I was also facing an eviction for my childcare center. Everything was just literally, the walls were caving in on me. And that's when I realized kind of the same thing like you were, I need to learn I need to learn this stuff. But at the same time, I am not a numbers person. I know to stay in my lane. So instead, I hire the right people to do the money part of it. But yes, we were talking about mindset. David asked me, what is it that changed? And honestly, the biggest thing was my mindset. I had to take control of how I saw things, how I thought. I used to have a victim mentality and I had to break free of that and get educated and also align myself with the right people. I am never going to be an accountant. So finding the right accountant, the right bookkeeper, those were the things that were so key to me turning my business around and becoming a successful childcare center owner.
Even, to tell you the truth, I don't do my own bookkeeping.
Yeah.
It's meaningless. Why would I spend an hour, 2 hours doing bookkeeping when I can take that focus and shift it into building the business and managing the operations? Because that's what my job is as a CEO, is to manage that. A bookkeeping, certain tasks, I delegate to other people. At the end of the month, I just look at a report and in 2 minutes, I see exactly what my numbers are. And it's funny because when we were having this conversation earlier, you mentioned that you purchased another daycare. And that's one of the things I tell my clients. Listen, you can't go purchase a house or daycare if you don't know your numbers.
Yes.
And it's so critical. I have to, every time I get on that call, you have to know your numbers. You have to know your numbers. You have to know your numbers. So because of that, now we do videos of the profit and loss so that clients can get a better picture and a better understanding of where they are. So if they do come across an opportunity, they could pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Because they know their numbers.
Yes. 2 things on that I love that you just said. One of the things I teach my clients all the time is you have to know your worth, right? So for me, I always set the stage for them. How much do you think you're worth an hour? For me, myself, right now, I'm at a point in my life where I will not take a task on that isn't worth about $1,000 an hour. For my own director, I look at it as if I wouldn't pay somebody $100 an hour, she doesn't do it. If I wouldn't pay someone $1,000 an hour, I do. So of course, you shouldn't be doing your own bookkeeping. right?
So we find that a lot of businesses are emerging themselves in the business, they wear different hats. I like to call it the therapist, they're the counselor, they're debt collector sometimes, and they shouldn't be focusing on that. I had a client that I spoke with, and she happened to tell me that she was spending 20 hours a week on bookkeeping. I said, what? So I did the math as an accountant. That comes out to 1,040 hours a year. That equals 43 days in a year. So I asked her, what can you do with 43 days? How many vacations can you take? How much time can you spend with your family and your kids? How much more business can you bring in by working on the business? And like a bulb went off, she understood. Exactly. These are the type of situations that you have to remove yourself from so that now you can run the business and everyone else is performing those smaller tasks that you can delegate to. And it made all the sense in the world to her. And I hear you.
Okay, I'm just gonna have to get rid of that mic. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
It's my mics. Okay. I have a feeling it's my laptop's connection. I'll just get rid of the mics. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, it's gotta be me. Okay, so let me start over on that and then we'll delete that part too. And so that's what happens. And that's the power of working on your business instead of in your business, because you're actually doing those revenue generating tasks instead of the tactical all the time. And one of the things I know now too is I don't have to worry about what my competitors are charging, because I know that my center is so high quality and it's so good that the way I train it is I'm a category of one, right? I've created a category of one because we're so good about working on the business instead of in it. But if you're doing the tactical, if you're being the cook in the kitchen, doing your own bookkeeping, collecting payments, it doesn't give you time to do those things that grow. It doesn't give you time to really just scale the company itself and get to that point where you are a category of one.
Exactly. Like our mission is to reach 900,000 childcare owners in the US. If I don't have a task, we all focus on that. If don't bring me something that's not going to push us toward that goal.
Yes.
I will only take care of things and handle things that are going to push us towards that goal, because that's what's going to make the business grow. And as a CEO, that's your primary focus, and that's what we should focus on. Accounting, bookkeeping, the taxes, I don't worry about that.
Yes, that's what
I worry about getting in front of people.
Absolutely. That's what you leave to the experts, and that's when you hire. And again, that's when you know that there are certain things you want to hire for. And I know a lot of you out there, owners, you're so afraid to spend the money. And one of the things that I've learned the hard way, because I was there too once, I was so afraid. I didn't think I had enough money. How can I spend the money? But what I realized is by not hiring the right professionals, I was losing so much money. I was actually really just kind of crippling myself, to be honest. And as I started finally investing in the things that my company needed, it's amazing how my revenue went up. When I was at that point, when I finally decided, I basically was either facing bankruptcy or this was literally my Hail Mary. And I hired a team. It was actually an accounting firm at the time, which went out of business since, but it was an accounting firm. They had financial advisors. They did all these things. When I finally decided, okay, I might as well spend the money. I'm losing everything anyway. I literally had the thought, I can't afford not to anymore. And my company went from a negative $80,000 a year to a positive 60,000. And that was in just the first year, And since then that was years ago. So since then gosh, I don't even know how many times over we've increased our revenue from that. But just the power in 1 year to flip things when you get the right people in the right seats is insane.
Yes, it is. And there's several break points because depending on where you're at, if you're at a $500,000 business going to $1 million, there's certain things that you have to do to take you to $1 million. And once you hit the $1 million, then you have to restructure again to get to 3 million. So as you level up, there's certain things that need to change. It's going to get to the point, if you're doing $10 million, there's a specific talent that you're going to need that you're not going to find in Indeed.
Yes. Yes.
And that talent is hard to come by. And you have to have the right people in place that can push you towards the right direction so that you can find that talent. And that talent is going to take you then to 30 million.
Yeah.
And at that level, then you have another break point. So all these situations come into play, and we have to know how to use them.
Yeah, and that's something I've lived and it's a hard lesson, I have to say, because we love people, right? I had an accounting firm and a bookkeeper that I did outgrow. And at one point it was starting to really hurt my business. And I had also built a very good relationship with these people. So it was a difficult decision for me to graduate beyond them, but it was so necessary. And so, yeah, I've experienced firsthand exactly what you're talking about right now, where it's like, you do need to graduate sometimes. And, you know, a lot of times we pick the person down the street or the person you met at the Rotary Club or the Chamber of Commerce meeting, but we do outgrow them. And it is important to stay aligned or they will hold you back.
Great. And you have to be prepared to make those strong decisions.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they have to be made because in order to get to the next level, you need a team to help you to get there.
Yeah.
And if they don't have, because strategies change, the strategy that a $500,000 business I'm sharing is totally different from a $1 million business.
Mhm.
And it's going to be different for a $3 million business. So all these situations have to come into play because it's like our DNA. It's individual to each of us. So we just have to figure out what your primary goal is, where you know, how long do we have, and how to get you there. And we do it in intervals because we're very big on advisory. We want to advise you, and we call this tax planning. We're not tax preppers. I mean, anybody can do a tax return.
Mhm.
We want to focus on tax planning. And that's another one of those mindsets that I have to work to get everyone out of. Tax planning. We want to plan so at the end of the year, we've taken that plan and now we can incorporate it into the tax return. And that's where you're going to see the savings.
Right. That's awesome. One other thing I want to talk about today, when we were talking before before we started recording, was all the grants that are out there. I know ECE has been showing a lot of love. There's a lot of grants that we've been given, but it's one of the scariest things for me. I was telling you before we started that all of this money is wonderful, but one of the things that really scares me for our industry right now is that I've seen so many owners who have given raises, who've made permanent changes to their company based on the additional grant revenue. But I'm really nervous about that because it's not going to last. And it's not reliable funding. So when it's gone, it does really scare me that a lot of owners aren't going to sustain. Have you been seeing any of that, or what is your experience so far, in your opinion, even with what's going on?
I have. I've seen, at least here in New York, many daycare owners are getting letters from the state indicating that they want a profit and loss, or at least a detailed spreadsheet of where that money that they were given, how did they use it? And a lot of them are frantic because some used it improperly. But there's always a fix to that. At the same time, I've seen childcare owners on Facebook downplaying and talking bad about these grants because they had to pay tax. And like I tell all my clients, I want a $10 million tax bill.
Yeah.
I can't wait to pay it because I know that if I'm paying 10 million, I'm making 100.
Yes.
So the fact that these childcare owners they're used to getting a refund, now they have to pay, you're looking at it the wrong way.
Yeah.
We're in business to increase revenue, to increase our income. If you have the income, you just have to use it wisely so that now you can multiply yourself and grow the business. And it's a shame that so many feel that way. And I think it's lack of counsel.
Mhm.
Because if they're instructed the proper way, they will know exactly how to use that money.
Yeah.
And if you can use that money, so if you're short on staff, hire more staff. If you hire more staff, you'll be able to increase your capacity. And by increasing your capacity, you're increasing your revenue.
Yeah. And that's, so one of the things I did with part of the grant money I got last year, I have a really big, one of my classrooms was really, really big. It's licensed for 33 2-year-olds, and no one's going to put 33 2-year-olds in one room. So I had a wall put up. I had a really nice wall put up, divided the classroom in two. Well, and here in Nevada, we have group sizes, so I couldn't take more than 16 children in that room anyway. So basically, I used part of the money to build a wall, and the wall separated the two classrooms so that now, instead of just one classroom that's licensed for 33, but I'm capped at 16, now I could actually take the numbers to full capacity. So that's a great way to think about, I'm increasing my revenue. I'm using these funds, like I did need to hire 2 more teachers, but I'm also taking 15 more children. So that's a way to think about, like, we're increasing our amount of children that we can serve, and the money that I'm writing off are those 2 additional teachers.
And I came across this year 2 childcare businesses where they were making close to $1 million or over $1 million, and there was no depreciation. They weren't taking any depreciation. It's like, what? I had to go back, in one case, amend 2021 and bring that information in so that they can capitalize on it. So at the end of the year, the end of 2022, I think I put it on TikTok, give me a call, so let's go over depreciation. Because 100% bonus depreciation expired in 2022. This year's down to 80%. And it just so happens, one of my clients said, David, I need 2 vans. Says, go buy them now. And she got grant money. Said, go buy them now, and we'll take 100% bonus depreciation, and we will lower your net income, and thereby lower your taxes.
Right.
Simple strategies. We just have to know how and when to apply.
Yeah, and that's why having the right people on your side and in your team is so very important. And so for those of you owners out there, I really want you to put that in perspective. A lot of times you're afraid to spend the money, right? You're afraid to pay a $2,000 or $3,000 accounting bill. But if it's saving you $10,000 or $20,000, really think about the logic behind that. When you have the right people in your corner, you're going to be making so much more money in the long run because of the thousands and thousands of dollars that you'll be saving.
And one thing we preach here is pay yourself. So I had a client, this guy, it was a male. He had 451 net income. He was gonna pay like 60 grand in taxes. I told him this, drop 61,000 into a SEP IRA, retirement account, and that lowered his tax to 40. He saved $20,000. So why would you pay an extra $20,000 in tax when you can pay yourself?
Yeah.
So that's my motto: pay yourself.
Yes, I'm going to have to talk to you about that, because that, that is something I still struggle with. One of my goal this year is to pay myself. I always end up finding new projects and new things to invest in, instead of paying myself. So even though I know I am establishing long-term growth, and just my portfolio is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, I still need to start paying myself a decent annual income. So, and I have 2 companies, so I kind of justify, okay, well, this one's doing this and that one, I'm making the money here, so I can put the money here. So yeah, it's something I need to get better about.
So there's a simple strategy that I use that kind of, again, with the mindset that forces you to focus on what the goal is. So I started asking business owners, do you have a date when you plan to sell?
Oh, okay.
I haven't met one yet. So when you create a business, nobody thinks about selling. You have to figure out a date. And when you figure out a date, you're now focused, because you know that in 2030, I'm going to be selling. And this is what I have to do every month, every year, every day to get to that goal. So do you want to sell at 1-time multiple, 2-time multiple, 3-time multiple? Whatever the case is, you know exactly what that focus is. And when you have that date in mind, you have no choice but to grow the business, because you want to sell at a high multiple.
That's a great point, because so many business owners, and it's something I teach my clients all the time, they don't think in terms of that long-term goal. And I do get my business prepared to be just marketable. But I love the fact that you actually put a date on it, because that is something I don't do. And always use an example. There was this auto center in my hometown, and I live in a small town, and it had been there for 30 years, highly profitable, but the owner didn't set it up. So he really never planned on selling. So when it was time to retire, he had to keep putting it off. And then finally, he just had to shut his doors. And the business is now gone because he didn't prepare ahead of time. He didn't treat his company like it was an asset. And that is a big, big, big problem. We've got to treat our centers like they're an asset, because it should be your retirement plan. It absolutely should be part of your retirement plan.
Has to be. And I already know what the retirement plan is and what I'm going to do with those funds. So it's not necessarily retiring. It's okay, what I'm going to do with those funds, where I'm going to park it, how much money do I need for the rest of my life, and what vehicle is going to generate that.
Yes.
So all of that is planning, and no one talks about that.
Yeah.
No one talks about, everyone wants, how much is the tax return? Forget about that. We're talking about planning for your future. We're going to talk strategies, simple strategy. I had a client last week, the husband and wife, they both own a separate business. They're on payroll. Says, listen, put the kids on payroll. This is what I do with my kids. I put them on payroll. They do miscellaneous tasks. I could pay them $12,000. $6,000, I dump it to a Roth IRA. Why a Roth? A Roth can grow to $1 million. They can pull that money out, pay zero tax.
Oh, wow.
But that Roth IRA, when they were younger, under 17, they were just accumulating money. And if they just left that there for 30 years, they'll have $1 million.
Wow. Oh my goodness, it's crazy.
And it's a tax deduction to the business.
Wow. That is, and you're setting up that savings for your child that might end up paying for college and keep them away from those
Exactly.
loans. Wow, that is interesting. Well, David, it has been such a great conversation. I think I'm definitely going to have you back on the podcast, and we're going to have to talk because there's so much we can collaborate on. So definitely going to have to continue this conversation. Do you have any last nuggets that you would love to share?
Well, not so much of a nugget. We're here to help, regardless of the question, whatever it is, whatever the concern. You can just feel free to give us a call. We'd help. We're here to help. Calls, emails don't cost a thing. We don't charge anyone. We just want to help.
Well, let my audience know where they can get a hold of you.
Our phone number is 718-515-2532. And my email address is david@daycareaccountingpro.com.
And we will definitely put that in the show notes so that everybody can get a hold of you. Well, thank you, David.
Thank you, Evelyn, for having me.